Imagine waking up in a dark, filthy basement chained to a pipe, with a man above you preaching about building a perfect race through unimaginable horror. This isn't fiction. It's the nightmare orchestrated by Gary Heidnik, a psychopath who didn't just commit atrocities. He twisted the science of the mind to evade detection for years. What if the delusions that psychiatrists scribbled in their notes were nothing but a masterful performance? Buckle up, because tonight, we're diving into the chilling tale of how one man's calculated insanity fooled the experts and exposed the fragile boundaries of human psychology. Gary Heidnik wasn't your typical monster lurking in shadows. Born in 1943 in Ohio, he grew up in a turbulent home, marked by abuse and instability, which psychologists later pointed to as the seed of his fractured psyche. But here's where it gets intriguing. Heidnik possessed a genius-level IQ, rumored to be around 148, allowing him to amass a small fortune through savvy stock investments. He even founded his own church, the United Church of the Ministers of God, not out of divine calling, but as a tax shelter and a facade for his darker impulses. Psychologically speaking, this screams narcissistic personality disorder, a condition where grandiosity and manipulation become tools for survival. Heidnik wasn't just smart, he was cunning enough to weaponize his intellect, turning societal structures like religion and finance into shields that hid his unraveling mind. How does a man with such control descend into chaos? Or was the chaos always a deliberate choice? His early brushes with authority revealed cracks that experts might have missed, or that Heidnik cleverly exaggerated. After dropping out of high school, he joined the U.S. Army at 17, excelling in training until headaches, dizziness, and nausea led to a diagnosis of schizoid personality disorder in 1962. Honorably discharged, he cycled through psychiatric hospitals for decades, attempting suicide over a dozen times. Was this genuine torment, or a rehearsed act to build a paper trail of instability? Psychologists debate this. Schizoid individuals often detach emotionally, viewing others as objects rather than equals, which aligns with Heidnik's later crimes. Yet his financial empire, growing to over $500,000 by the mid-80s, suggests a level of executive function that contradicts true delusion. It's a psychological puzzle. Could he have been faking symptoms to manipulate the system? Or did his high IQ allow him to compartmentalize madness from method? By the 1980s, Heidnik's life appeared polished on the surface, but beneath it simmered a delusion, or was it, of creating a utopian legacy. Living in a rundown Philadelphia neighborhood, he lured vulnerable women into his home, starting with Josefina Rivera in November 1986. What followed was a descent into hell. Heidnik kidnapped 6 women over 4 months. Chaining them in a basement pit he dug himself, he subjected them to rape, beatings, and electric shocks, all while preaching his twisted gospel of impregnating them to birth a perfect race of mixed-heritage children. Psychologically, this echoes megalomania, where the ego inflates to godlike proportions, but experts argue it might have been a calculated narrative. Why? Because Heidnik's actions showed premeditation. He stocked supplies, silenced screams with music, and even forced the women to turn on each other. In the realm of psychopathology, this isn't blind insanity. It's antisocial personality disorder laced with sadism, where empathy is absent, and control is the ultimate high. How far can the human mind bend reality before it snaps? And was Heidnik bending it on purpose? The women trapped in Heidnik's basement weren't just victims. They were survivors navigating a psychological war zone. Starved, tortured, and pitted against each other, they faced a manipulator who thrived on division. Heidnik's tactics, offering small privileges to some while punishing others, mirror classic psychological experiments like the Stanford Prison Study, where power dynamics erode trust and foster betrayal. Yet, amidst this despair, their resilience shone. Josefina Rivera, for instance, played into Heidnik's trust, not out of submission but survival, a testament to the human spirit's adaptability. Psychologically, this highlights cognitive dissonance. The women had to balance self-preservation with the moral weight of compliance. How does the mind endure such trauma without breaking? And what does their strength reveal about the psyche's capacity to resist even the darkest oppression? The horrors escalated when rebellion stirred among his captives. Sandra Lindsay, one of the first victims, died in February 1987 from starvation and torture, her body dismembered in a grotesque ritual that Heidnik later claimed involved cooking parts to feed the others. though evidence of cannibalism remained unproven. Then came Deborah Dudley, electrocuted in a water-filled pit as punishment. These acts weren't random. They were power plays, designed to instill terror and obedience. From a psychological lens, Heidnik's behavior mirrors the dark triad: narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy. He manipulated not just his victims, but the very fabric of truth, fabricating stories that blurred the line between delusion and deception. Imagine the mental gymnastics required to maintain such a facade. Did he believe his own lies? Or was it all a game to outsmart those who studied the mind? Heidnik's ability to toggle between calculated cruelty and feigned instability raises chilling questions about the nature of psychopathy. During his crimes, he maintained a public persona, attending church, managing investments, while running a torture chamber in his basement. This duality suggests a phenomenon psychologists call masking, where psychopaths mimic normalcy to blend in. Unlike disorganized killers, Heidnik's crimes were methodical, his delusions possibly a script to exploit legal loopholes. Studies on psychopathy, like those by Canadian psychologist Robert Hare, show that high-functioning psychopaths excel at reading and manipulating emotions they don't feel. Was Heidnik's talk of a perfect race a genuine belief, or a calculated story to confuse investigators? This ambiguity challenges our understanding of mental illness versus malevolence. Freedom came not from rescue but from cunning within the nightmare. Josefina Rivera, earning Heidnik's twisted trust, convinced him to let her visit family in March 1987. Instead, she fled to the police, leading to his arrest. As authorities unearthed the basement horrors, chains, pits, and frozen remains, the world recoiled. But the real mind-bender was yet to come. Heidnik's trial, where he pleaded insanity. Psychiatrists testified to his schizoid history, painting him as delusional, yet the prosecution dismantled it piece by piece. His stock portfolio, managed astutely even during the crimes, proved competence. His lawyer later admitted Heidnik exaggerated tales like cannibalism to bolster the plea. This raises profound questions about forensic psychology. How do we distinguish genuine psychosis from malingering? Heidnik's case exposed vulnerabilities in evaluations. High-intelligence psychopaths can mimic symptoms, fooling even seasoned experts. Was science outplayed by a master manipulator? Convicted in 1988 of 2 murders and a slew of other charges, Heidnik was sentenced to death, his appeals dragging on for years amid debates over his mental state. Family members, including his daughter, fought for stays, arguing incompetence due to delusions, but courts ruled otherwise. On July 6, 1999, he was executed by lethal injection, his last words a defiant silence. In death, Heidnik left a legacy not just of terror but of introspection. His story forces us to confront the elasticity of the human psyche. Are delusions ever truly false if they serve a purpose? In the study of false delusions, Heidnik stands as a cautionary tale. Psychopathy isn't always raving madness. Sometimes, it's a cold, calculated performance that deceives us all. Heidnik's case didn't just expose his depravity. It revealed gaps in psychological science itself. Forensic assessments rely on observable symptoms. But what happens when a subject manipulates those symptoms? Heidnik's documented history of mental illness, suicide attempts, hospitalizations, gave his insanity plea weight, yet his calculated crimes suggested otherwise. Modern research like the Hare Psychopathy checklist aims to detect such deception, but even today, high-functioning psychopaths can exploit diagnostic ambiguities. This case forces us to ask, are our tools for measuring madness too blunt to catch those who craft their own narratives? Heidnik's legacy lingers in courtrooms and clinics, where the line between sick and sinister remains perilously thin. Reflecting deeper, Heidnik's life illuminates the interplay of nature and nurture in forging monsters. Abused as a child, discharged for mental issues, yet thriving financially, his trajectory suggests trauma can warp empathy into exploitation. Psychologists like Robert Hare note that such individuals lack remorse, using charm or intellect as weapons. Heidnik fooled science by exploiting diagnostic gray areas, reminding us that the mind's darkest corners resist easy labels. What if more like him walk among us, their delusions just masks for malevolence? As we wrap this grim journey, consider, in a world obsessed with understanding the psyche, Heidnik's deception warns that some minds are built to evade capture, not just physically but intellectually. If his insanity was an act, it was Oscar-worthy, exposing how fragile our grasp on reality truly is. Thanks for watching. Hit that like button if this chilled you to the core, and subscribe for more dives into the abyss of the human mind. What psychological enigma should we unravel next? Drop it in the comments. Stay curious, stay vigilant,